Hey there, scary people, and welcome back to the one and only Scary Woman YouTube channel, where you get to watch me make a feature film over the course of this next year. So at this stage, we're still talking about the screenplay stage, the screenwriting stage, and I'm putting such a focus on this for the whole first section of, this challenge that I've set for myself, just because it really is so important to get the screenplay right. There's a saying that, you might have a good screenplay that turns into a bad movie because of choices, that are made along the way by other people, but you will never have a good movie that came from a bad screenplay. Never. So, for this particular video, I wanted to just take a moment and talk a little bit about adaptations. So if you're one of my students or one of the authors that I coach, you know that adaptations are one of my specialties. So whenever a screenplay is adapted from some other source material, there's a particular process to that. And it's a little bit different than just writing something from scratch. So if you're going through this process with me and you're trying to think of, what do you want to work on as your central concept, you might have some sort of existing intellectual property that you want to adapt into that film or that television series or whatever it is that you're dreaming about. Now, most commonly, this will be a book. So people reach out because they want to adapt books, but it can also be other things. People adapt plays. People simply want to adapt their life stories for the screen. Once I was even hired just to adapt a collection of songs into a story and build a story around the songs. So there's all types of adaptations that can take place. Now, if you're considering doing an adaptation, the main focus that you have to keep in mind is just that you have to be really, really clear on what is the through line of that story. So another way for me to say this is just what is that central essence that you're going to have to stick to. Now, this is really, really important for adaptations because when you're writing a screenplay from scratch, it's not adapted, from anything else. You, from the very beginning, can adapt it to fit screenwriting guidelines. And in a future video, we'll talk a little bit about screenplay structure and how to do that. But when you're adapting something, chances are you're either coming in with a whole lot of information if you're writing from a book and trying to adapt from a book, and you're gonna have to cut a lot of that out. Or if you're coming from some other kind of source material, maybe a play where it was just originally a discussion on stage, one set, two people, chances are you're going to have to add a lot in to make that interesting to watch as a film as opposed to a stage play. So it's really, really important to just hone into the essence, and whether you have to take things away or add things in, remain certain that whatever is going into that final screenplay is true to the essence of that story and continues to deliver on that central theme. Now, it's often very, very difficult for authors, especially, to cut things out. So I don't know, on the play side of things, it can also definitely be a challenge to come up with the right stuff to add in. But when it's an author who's very, very close to their book, the idea of taking things out is sometimes very painful. They might want to fit in each and every detail, which is technically impossible. So some basic screenwriting rules: that screenplay cannot be more than 120 pages long. Rule of thumb, that equals about 2 hours of screen time. And nowadays, the trend is really skewing even lower. So if you can get it to be more like 100 pages, that's great. So it's literally impossible to take a 500-page book, or however many hundreds of pages the book was, and fit that into a 100-page screenplay, especially since the screenplay is mostly dialogue. So sacrifices are going to have to be made. And the best way to make them and know that you're making them appropriately is, again, just to hone in, really sit with yourself and think about what is the central essence of this story, and make sure that every scene, every character, everything that's being included ties into that essence. And once you do eventually have that rough draft, this is something really important to go back and check for as well as you read each scene. Is this delivering? Is this sticking with that essence? Or have you put in something, superfluous that you didn't need? Or did you add something just for the sake of adding it, but it's not really tying into the essence? So essence is definitely the word of the day, something to think about. If you want to go even deeper in this adaptation process, you can check out my book to script course, which will help you adapt any source material into a killer screenplay. And definitely like and subscribe the channel if this interests you. From time to time, I will for sure be sharing some case study examples of really famous, really successful movies that were adapted from books. So thank you so much, YouTube. Take care, and I'll see you again soon.